Welcome to the Impactful Leadership Show. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. John Lennon once said, "A dream you dream alone is only a dream. A dream you dream together is reality." Join me as we connect dreams to reality by chatting with innovators from around Washington, D.C. Our show is proudly sponsored by the D.C. chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. This is the Impactful Leadership Show. Welcome to the Impactful Leadership Show. I'm your host, Greg McDonough, CEO of Blackburn Capital Advisors. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur, aviator, world traveler, weekend warrior, and coach. He thinks of himself as half geek, half sales guy, passionate about how innovation and technology can solve problems. He's been an entrepreneur for more than 25 years, a longtime member and past president of EODC. He's also a commercial pilot with over 14,000 hours and 30 different aircraft types. CEO and co-founder of Airgility. Please welcome Pramod Raheja. Welcome, Pramod.
Thanks, Greg. Nice to be here. Appreciate you having me.
I love having you on the show. So our show is about leadership. And my favorite question to ask my guests is, Pramod, tell me about some misconceptions in leadership.
Yeah, sure. I think one that I might have had, or I think I see a lot of people have, is as an entrepreneur, which is really how I would, identify myself as somebody that, sees something and wants to do something about it, solve a problem, and somehow, make a buck off of that, solving that problem, right? Or at least having an impact and being able to help somebody. One of the things I see though is if you're going to do that, you've got to build a team. You've got to bring people on board your organization, whatever you're doing. And it's not enough to just say, I'm a founder and I started this company, and by default, I'm a good leader. That is absolutely, a big misconception. I'd say it's especially with younger people that, are starting things. And so I would say for me, myself, I've had, over the last 15 to almost 20 years, have spent a significant amount of time really honing in on those leadership skills that you don't just naturally have, and that are acquired and that you have to learn. So I think that an intentional effort to be able to be a good leader is there. And even when you think you are, there's always so much more you can learn. And so I think the misconception is just because you're an entrepreneur and a founder doesn't make you a good leader.
That's very well said. And you talked about your leadership journey. Let's get a little bit deeper into that. What have you done, or what do you do on a regular basis to sort of sharpen your leadership tool?
Yeah, I think the internet obviously has lots of things on there, and you can certainly download lots of books and materials and Harvard Business Review and this and that. But I'd say the one thing that's probably been the most impactful, because I know we're in the Impact Leadership Show here, so I'm going to give you the most impactful stuff. The most impactful thing for me has been my connection with my peers, my fellow founders, fellow founder CEOs, we'll call them, right? Because you do have to grow into the CEO role, I believe. And so my fellow founder CEOs, which I learned so much from, and it could be something as, very strategic. It could be something very tactical as to, gee, how did you handle this one, how would you handle this one situation with a employee I'm having, or et cetera, that, sometimes sounds simple on the surface, but there could be some underlying layers that are complicated below that underlying problem that cause you to pause and say, am I really doing this right? And if I do it a certain way, what are the repercussions, after the fact, and how is it going to affect my company, the people around our team, our reputation as a company, things like that you got to ask those questions. And so it does require some thinking. And so I've always found, to wrap that with a bow, I've always found that my peers are the best place, is the best place to go. And there's always some experience that somebody has had that can be helpful and impactful.
So asking that question a little bit differently, there's an audience member who's thinking about starting their entrepreneurial journey, but doesn't know where to find their peers. Like, how do you, especially earlier on in your career, as you're developing your tool set, where do you find, other than the internet, or maybe it is the internet, but where can you find like-minded people?
Yeah, absolutely. And, these days, of course, there's tons of networks out there online for founders. Of course, you can see it on my shirt here. The one for me was EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And that one has, for the last 11 years now has been, my go-to for the, ability to connect with my peers, and sometimes just connecting in a social setting even, and having some light conversations can lead to more meaningful conversations once, a relationship and trust is established between individuals. And that applies to everything in life, of course, but specifically founders and entrepreneurs are very busy. So I'll say we're not going to give somebody time unless it's, we feel like we're able to really help them, and that that we're able to impact them. And if we just feel like we're wasting our time, sometimes we don't even pay attention because we're so mired in our own world of what we need to do. So what my point being there, that is that an organization like Entrepreneurs Organization, where you connect both online and in person, allows you to build relationships, and meaningful ones, where now those conversations are much easier to have, and people will respond and say, hey, yeah, I'd love to chat with you. Sure. And take very valuable time out of their day.
Certainly. I wanted to jump back to your misconception around the fact that you're a founder or a business owner or an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader. And in your comment, you mentioned about leading young people. And I know your business, and we'll get into those details shortly, but you're very high tech, recruiting out of colleges, recruiting out of master's engineers, competing up against the Amazons of the world. Talk to us about your recruiting, and how do you differentiate yourself from the Amazons and these other companies that are picking up the same engineers that you want to pick up?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I'll just clear up is that I think when you are an entrepreneur or founder, you by default are a leader. It's not that you're not a leader, but you're not necessarily an effective leader that has impact, right? I've seen, and I've even experienced it in my younger days, where you have high turnover, and then you're wondering, well, why do we have high turnover? And then you start examining that problem, and maybe if you're if you're the type of person that looks inward, then you say, hey, maybe I could be doing something better, right? And then you figure out how to do that. So going back to your question now of recruiting, we'll call, people that are, earlier in their careers, that have, really good competing potentially job offers with large companies that, with larger compensation packages and benefits, et cetera. I'd say that one of the things that's attractive, that people find attractive with us, is really the culture. It's a culture of, I would say, people first. We really invest in our people in terms of, as we grow and scale, we want, a lot of the people that you're describing are, scientific, research, innovative, right? And so they're very focused on their solution sets and solving that. But we also emphasize that because the company is still early stage and young, that they have an opportunity to grow into leadership roles should they want to. And so that's an attractive feature to come work with us, because by default, they're put into a role where they are, just like a founder, you are a leader because you have to be, but it doesn't mean you're effective. And so we really work hard to give them that skill set and work with them on a regular basis to improve those managerial / leadership skills that they didn't come right out of school with, and maybe they've never even seen before.
That's very interesting and it's very insightful. Shifting gears a little bit, but staying in the high tech space, you're also very involved in the capital markets, fundraising, venture world. Talk to us a little bit about living in that environment.
Yeah, it's I think if we were to ask any founder right now that was sitting here if somebody was sitting here next to me, they would probably say a very similar thing, which is it is a nonstop, busy follow-up hustle type of world. You could even some of the founders out there that are well known and have great success under their belt, maybe multiple successes, that you would think that automatically just could have people write checks. Even they have to, go out there and really work hard. And so it is an environment where it is cutthroat. It is difficult. You have to, I'd say the big takeaway there from an impact perspective is you have to be able to take objections well and learn from them and keep moving. And you might have 100 rejections and you still have to keep just moving and going. And I think why you could do that, why you could keep moving is if you really truly believe in what you're doing. If you truly believe in what you're doing, then it's actually fairly easy to take a no and say, okay, whatever, you missed opportunity. That's okay. I'll keep you in the loop, and we'll keep going. So
that's painful to hear, but I completely understand. As you look back over the fundraising times, any common mistakes that you've made or you've seen other founders make while in that capital formation process?
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot there, but I'll say one that I see often made, pretty often, and I'd say it's a very basic one, is the cold outreach to just anybody. And what I mean by that is, well, that's one, but two, I'd say sometimes raising money too early as well. Like there's this sort of misconception, since we're talking about misconceptions, and I'll kind of dive into that, which is to say that people think, okay, I have an idea, let me go raise some money and then start executing on that idea. And that still today happens quite often. My answer to that, or the mistake that's made there, is go figure out how you can build something that is, we'll call it a prototype for now, a prototype or something that you could show and actually prove your the demand for that, the product market fit, we'll call it, with some trial customers, we'll call it, right? So in one of my past businesses, that's exactly what we did. We didn't really have money for a budget where, to go hire developers and build our software product, SaaS product. And we built something. Just nowadays, there's so many tools online that you don't need to know how to code, and you can piece things together and actually make something work. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be exactly your final product? Absolutely not. But it's enough to go to a potential buyer and say, hey, let me show you what I have. Would you buy it? And, they may say yes. But, if you can get even further and actually have them write you a check, which I've done also, then you have the case for, hey, there's something here. And now maybe I'll go raise money. So actually build something, do something on your own, bootstrap it initially. You don't need tons of people or tons of money to do that. But yeah, maybe to scale and to actually build the product the way you want, yeah, you're going to need money. But the big misconception or the big mistake I see is people going out too early with just the idea, and they're just going to get, in many cases, just shot down right before they even get started. So, or if somebody does decide to invest, the terms are not going to be as ideal as the founder would really like at that point in time.
Certainly, yeah. That balance between how much bootstrapping versus going out and truly fundraising, and to the point that you made before about capital formation, right? That's another full-time job. So not only are you developing your technology, working on your sales execution, now you've got a capital formation strategy that you've got to be attentive to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Absolutely.
You also mentioned, Pramod, this ability to find resources that, you said, you made the comment about you don't need to know how to code anymore. You could piece together components to get where you want your technology to be, which is very much, the gig economy. You're finding very specific slivers. Talk to us about working in this gig economy, where you found sort of these little pockets of, output. Walk us through how you think through that now.
Yeah, absolutely. So two things. One, you probably do want somebody to be able to code at some point. However, early on you don't. And there's plenty of tools out there. Like there's one called bubble.io as an example, where you can put together your solution. And oh, by the way, now leading into your question, you can even get somebody like a freelancer to even do that for you and follow your guidance and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I still take the approach, and I probably always will now forever, of when it comes to hiring, in many cases, especially early on, you may not need somebody full time. You may need somebody 10 hours a week, 5 hours a week, or maybe it's a project effort. And then, after that project's done, that initial prototype's done, maybe nothing happens now for a couple months while you're out there figuring out how this works and what the traction looks like and things like that. Or maybe you just need them to kind of continue to do maintenance. So yeah, we take what I would call a team-based approach to hiring freelancers. To get very specific, I'm a big believer in the gig economy. I do believe also that there are certain roles that you do want to insource and keep completely full-time in-house. But there's many roles that can supplement. In fact, right now we're bringing on a digital marketing, for lack of a better title, a digital marketing consultant coordinator that, a lot of what we do on the marketing side is in the digital realm. We're doing things in social media. We're starting to put content out there, things like that, and it does work, right? But in order for it to work, you've got to have the resources and you've got to have the consistency. Otherwise, you can't just say, okay, let me put up a social media post today and then not do anything for another couple months. That doesn't work. You have to be, and that goes to some of the Gary Vee stuff that people probably know about, which is like, you've got to be out there all the time. And in order to do that, you got to have the right talent. But do I need somebody doing digital marketing for me right now, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week? Probably not. 10 to maybe 15, 20 suffices and is very effective at the moment. Long term, that may change, right? So your business will evolve, but early on, and since you focus kind of on the early stage entrepreneur, early on, you could piece a lot of this together. There's so many tools out there now, both there's, do-it-yourself tools where you can go like Upwork and things like that. And then there's also more concierge-based type of organizations where you just say, hey, I don't really have the time to go and search for the right candidate. I'll pay you. You find me the right candidates, and if they don't work out, you replace them, et cetera. And so more of a concierge style as well. So there's plenty of options these days. To me, it's a great thing. It's never been easier in the history of the world to have an idea on a Friday and to have something launched on a Monday. And I literally, I can say that you could do that. So
I love it.
Well, it won't be perfect, but you could get something out there. So
that's fantastic. That's inspiring, really. So we've been talking about the how you've been running and building your business. Talk to us about Airgility. What's your focus? What's the technology? Get into the passion. To give us a little bit of what Airgility and your team has been doing.
Yeah, and I can say this now that I've kind of been around the world and seen pretty much everything that's out there. Airgility is building the most autonomous and we'll call it smart, or using artificial intelligence, aerial robots, or as most of the world knows, drones out there. So we build self-flying software that we we actually put into our own drone designs, of which we have 5 issued patents now, with that can basically fly and think on their own to a certain extent. Ultimately, we're going to take that software, turn it into an operating system, and be able to implement that in many other types of other drones, because the drone world is like the aircraft world. There's many different types of drones for many different types of missions and use cases, and it's actually much bigger than even manned aircraft that most of our audience will know. Most of our audience will think, okay, use a fighter jet, a fighter aircraft for fighting. You use a transport for cargo and for people, and there's just a few types of, we'll call, categories. In the drone world, there's much more than that. It's really quite broad and growing. And so we know that we're not going to build every type of piece of hardware out there, but we can certainly put our software into many types of hardware. But for the moment, we're putting our self-flying software into our drone designs, and then selling them for very specific use cases. Specifically, we like to go into dark, dirty, dangerous places that maybe people go right now. The status quo is that people go, but maybe you don't want people to go in there. They've got to climb into a very dirty, dark tunnel, and there's danger or potential danger or hazards. And so why not send a machine in there, a robot that, like, if you lose that, okay, you lost it, but you didn't lose a human, you didn't lose a person. So our mission, our focus, what drives us, what wakes us up in the morning is really to how do we improve and save lives with what we do. And that's really what drives us every day.
Fantastic. And so talk to us also about how you were founded. Like, give us the journey, and then I want to get into your background after that.
Sure. So we were founded through what I would call an arranged marriage. So my co-founder was a faculty, aerospace engineering faculty, which is also my alma mater and my major at the University of Maryland. He was working on a very specific, unique intellectual property around essentially drone designs. And if you're a faculty at a university, you work for them. So you have to disclose your inventions. So you have to basically tell them, hey, this is what I'm doing if you want to, and if you want to do something with that, if you want to commercialize it. And so that's what he did. He went through a path of commercialization, got some funding to start building prototypes. And through that process of commercialization is also the matchmaking and the introductions that occur as part of that process. And so the individuals that are involved in that are called entrepreneurs in residence. They typically don't live at the university, but their role is to foster entrepreneurship and work with faculty on commercializing technology. And so I was introduced to my co-founder Evandro to actually start a company if we wanted to. But the idea was, hey, you guys should meet. If there's something here, go forward. And so after about 3.5 months of dating, we co-founded Airgility, came up with the name and the logo and all that sort of thing, incorporated, and got out of the gate. Initially got some grant funding right after we started the company. And then from there on, kind of proceeded to get some other funding and some small contracts that really kind of set us on our path to what we have now.
Fantastic. So switching gears a little bit, let's talk about Pramod. Like, when did you get this entrepreneurial bug? What kind of businesses have you been involved with? Give us some of your history.
So when you introduced me, you said I was also, an aerospace guy and all that. So ever since I can remember, I've had airplanes and spaceships on my wall, probably age 4 or 5, maybe. While other kids at that age, in that time frame of the 80s, we'll call it, had Farrah Fawcett and other fixtures on their walls. I had Neil Armstrong and an F-16 or something like that on my wall. And then so fast forward to high school, when now you're a little bit older. I remember just always really being involved and wanting to be involved in organizations and be kind of the leadership structure, and also always trying to figure out, is there something I can sell? And back then we didn't really talk about entrepreneurship. There wasn't like curriculum. Nowadays in colleges and even in high schools, my son went to a high school where they had a whole entrepreneurship curriculum, and they had none of that back then. So I started out selling t-shirts for various things. And that kind of parlayed a little bit into college off and on, and even post-college. And so that would be, I would say, the start of like what I call being an accidental salesperson as well, right? I never thought of myself. Again, back then, nobody ever talked about sales as a career, and as we know, entrepreneurs somehow have to figure out how to sell, whether it's, through somebody on your team, or even yourself kind of has to know how to talk about something and do it in an effective manner. And so I'd say it goes way back then. And then, as you mentioned, I'm a pilot. So I started flying, got a job flying, but I was always hustling on the side. And back in the day when everybody carried pagers, part of this audience probably doesn't even know what a pager is, but we would carry pagers. Doctors carried pagers to be on call. Pilots carried pagers. I would sell pagers and long distance service to fellow pilots. And even long distance service, people don't know what it was like back then. You couldn't, if you wanted to call home from on the road, it was a long distance call from your hotel, right? And this is before cell phones. So we, worked with some telcos and figured out how to sell 800 numbers that they could attach that are home lines, which was a fraction of the cost of what it would have cost calling from the hotel. So these were some things I did early on that parlayed into consulting. Some consulting kind of small businesses. And then ultimately I got into franchising and bought a few franchises and sold those. Really, though, my heart and soul is leading edge technology. I read MIT stuff from MIT and IEEE and all these things. And so I'm really into technology, and specifically how aerospace technology can change the world. And I do believe we're at the cusp of a revolution right now, and an evolution of of aerospace, meaning how do we use drones? What's happening in space? If we just look at what's happening right now with SpaceX and many other companies, we're actually seeing a revolution happen right underneath our eyes, and it's pretty incredible to watch. And I see many of the Gen Z, the younger generation, watching Falcon X rockets take off and land and things like that. And so there's a lot happening right now, and I want to be a part of it.
So looking forward slightly, where does this industry, the industry that you're in, this technology, this innovation, what does it look like 5-10 years from now? Yeah.
So if we go back to when I graduated from college, it was I would call it at that time, the aerospace world was kind of dead. The space shuttle program had trouble, and there wasn't a whole lot going on. And many of my fellow aerospace engineers that graduated with me ended up going into IT and other things and never even got into aerospace. But if we go now to 2022 and we start looking out 5, 10, 15, even 20 years ahead, I'd say we're going to have a revolution for the next 20 years where you're going to see drones everywhere at some point. You're going to see air taxis. May not happen tomorrow, but yes, 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to start to see this mixing of what we call uncrewed systems or drones that don't have a person in them flying around in conjunction with manned aircraft in the National Airspace System. Maybe not at the same altitude and things like that, but they're going to be mixed in, and there's going to be deliveries. So everybody sees on the news Amazon and Google and things like that. Amazon is trying to perfect their deliveries, for example, and many other organizations like UPS and things like that are doing their own things. And so all of that is happening, and it I would say in the last few years was kind of slow, but now it's accelerating at a very fast pace. So to answer your question, the next 5, 10 years, you're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to see a lot more. It's going to be much cheaper to launch a satellite into space, as another example. And you're going to see innovation with even the aircraft that you jump on. We're going to see more focus on electric. How do we become more electric? And I think that may not happen. Again, that's not going to happen overnight, but 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we'll see more of those type of things too. So just the technology changing as we talk about renewables and sustainability. How do we get away from fossil fuels is another one. So there's just a lot of different disciplines. So for anybody that's listening to this that wants to get into those type of career fields or even start a business in these career fields, there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of problems to be solved.
Fantastic. So Pramod, audience member curious to reach out to you, wants to continue the conversation. What's your social media platform of choice? How can we get in touch?
Yeah, I'm on everything. I'd say LinkedIn is probably the social media platform of choice, but my handle is my first and last name, Pramod Raheja, on Twitter, on Instagram. Easy to find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I'm on pretty much everything, but LinkedIn is probably the one I use the most. I find it to be the most professional, and that's how I connect with other fellow founders, as well as in many cases partner companies and the like. So I'm easily reachable.
Wonderful. I'm so excited to continue to watch the progress that you and Airgility are making and experience the technology innovation for the next 5 to 10 years. So thanks for doing the hard work so that the rest of us can enjoy the luxuries of that hard work.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. And that's a wrap, my friends. Thank you for spending your time with me. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at impactfulleadershipshow.com. One last food for thought: walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone.